Good afternoon, Ms. Opperman.
Good afternoon, Chief Justice.
Gaan het goed?
Baie goed. Dankie, Chief Justice. Just being here is wonderful. Thank you for the Afrikaans also.
Tell us about your educational background at the university level. Where did you go? What did you obtain?
Chief Justice, I started to work at the Department of Justice when I was 17 years old, and I obtained my B. Juris, my LLB, and 2 master's degrees, as well as my attorney's admissions exams by part-time study.
This cum laude now, where did you get it? Oh, Free State. It was Free State?
Yes, yes. The Free State University, Chief Justice.
Both master's degrees cum laude?
Cum laude, Chief Justice, and the last one I did in serious economic offences,
Yes.
and we did that through in partnership with Cambridge University, Professor Barry Ryder and Professor Yaya Surya. They are both expert in international organised crime.
Wow. And for how long have you been a magistrate?
In October it will be 15 years.
15 years.
Yes.
And how long have you acted as a judge?
I've acted for 5 months, and I'm due for another stint now from next week.
Until?
Until end of May, middle of May.
Yes. Now, tell us now, what problems did you have when you first acted, and how did you overcome them?
Chief Justice, for me it was a wonderful experience. It was a very positive experience when I started there. The most difficult for me was adapt to the procedure, the directives, the new rhythm that you have in the high courts, and of course the hard work, the hours you have to put in with your judgments, the research. But luckily, the colleagues, they supported me
Yes.
unequivocally.
Since one of your master's degrees allowed you to deal also with sexual offenses and domestic violence,
Yes.
have you been able to use this acquired knowledge in practice?
Extensively so, Chief Justice. As I indicated in my previous interview, after my first acting stint in the High Court, during my acting stint, I went to our local domestic violence centre to drop off a file, and I saw the dire conditions that were there, and I volunteered to go and work there. They said to me it's maybe a career-limiting move, but I stayed there for 14 months. We trained the personnel, we renovated the building, and it was actually 14 of the best years of my career. Months.
You know that sexual violence and domestic violence are serious challenges in South Africa.
Chief Justice, the 14 months in the domestic violence court really, it opened my eyes as to what judicial responsibility is. It's something you cannot turn your back on as a presiding officer. For instance, last year on the 31st of March, I issued a protection order. I remember it was just after 3, and that evening the lady was killed. And just because there isn't a place of safety in Bloemfontein where the victims can go. And my judicial responsibility urged me to start asking questions. What is our reply as judicial officers to the plight of sexual offences and domestic violence?
Well, let's start with domestic violence. If you were, master's degree is not a joke. If you were to be charged with the responsibility to propose what needs to be done to ensure that we have the necessary human resource capacities and facilities that would ensure that domestic violence is dealt with properly, so that where there is a risk of that consequence that you've alluded to eventuating, it can be anticipated and prevented. What needs to be done briefly? Just focusing on domestic violence.
Just domestic
Because
violence.
many people do get killed.
Yes, yes.
What is it that needs to be done? What is it that we are missing? What is the missing link in the system, or links?
Chief Justice, I wrote an extensive report in January 2017 to my Chief Magistrate. Well, briefly.
Yes, briefly.
Briefly, we need the expertise. When I trained the people at the Tepong Domestic Violence Centre, I trained the magistrate, I trained the clerk of the court, I trained the police that work. I went out to the police stations and I trained policemen that worked with domestic violence cases, how to handle the interim orders that the magistrate issued. Then we must partner with all the other relevant role players, social development, health, everybody. There must be a very strong partnership. So for me, the most important is expertise. We must stop putting acting magistrates on the bench in domestic violence cases. And then the inter-partnership relationship, it's a holistic approach that we must follow.
At what stage should psychologists be factored into the process?
Chief Justice, we did a partnership with the law faculty at the University of the Free State whilst I was there. And we partnered with the psychology department. So if there is a shortage of social workers, psychology is so important. You can't go with that because it's a psychological, social, emotional problem. It's actually, the law is the reaction thereto. And the remedy thereto is that we are proactive and engaging psychologists, criminologists, and social workers.
If you were to rate our institution's ability to deal with domestic violence cases properly out of 10, in terms of human resource capacities, the facilities, how would you rank us in terms of our ability to do real justice to the domestic violence cases?
At the highest, 4 out of 10. And I say that out of experience. Is
it for the Free State or nationwide?
Well, I did do some research into other provinces, but I must say I can actually only with confidence rate Free State and Bloemfontein, and yeah.
Now, if you were to rate us now in terms of the performance of our sexual offences courts, our readiness to deal with these cases properly and as swiftly as their sensitivity and uniqueness require, how would you rate us?
It's been long since I've been in the sexual offences courts, but I keep a close eye on it because if you read my curriculum vitae, I started only the second sexual offences court in the country, and that was in Bloemfontein. Wynberg was our best practice module. So I would rate, we've got our Judicial projects,
sure.
All those projects. And I also spoke internationally. I'm closely connected with the university. So in my opinion, we would be at about 6 to 7 out of 10 at the moment.
So we're doing well, you would say?
Well, we are getting there.
We are getting there.
Yes.
What is needed? Do we have the skills? Do we, in terms of magistrates who are well trained to deal with these cases, prosecutors, social workers in sufficient numbers, and medical doctors who hopefully by now know how to complete forms properly because there were challenges in that regard. Just how ready are we? How skilled are we in that regard?
Chief Justice, I don't think we invest enough. I visited the Tutuzela Center at the hospital a month ago, and it wasn't physically. It didn't look very good, and they had a lack of doctors to do the examinations. The victims had to wait very long. I actually stuck my nose in where I shouldn't have. Again, it's a holistic approach. We can't just approach it from the bench. It must be holistic. We must ensure that each and everybody that works there knows what they do and they know each other's disciplines. It's not enough for me to be a presiding officer. I must know how does forensic evidence work. So we must be trained in each other's disciplines also.
Yes. Well, I wish we had time, but we don't. Maybe at some stage we would find time to dig deep into what really
Chief
is
Justice, that
required
will
to
be a
make
dream
this
come
work.
true for me because I said before I go on pension, I would want to see family courts established.
Yes.
Yes.
Now tell me, why do you believe you are ready for High Court appointment? Just in your own words, boast a bit.
I bring 34 years experience in the justice system, 34 years of experience and service to the Free State community in the justice system to the table, Chief Justice. I was a senior prosecutor, and what is very important these days is case flow management. When I was a senior prosecutor, I managed 32 courts, 47 prosecutors, and I'm still very involved in case flow management. That's the second thing, apart from my experience. And lastly, I bring academic depth to the table. In my first stint as an acting judge, I got a reported judgment.
And what is the longest you have kept a judgment reserved?
Last time, on my last interview, I answered that it was 6 months, but our JP sent she did lodge a complaint with the JSC due to the long-term outstanding, and the judge that did the inquiry found that it was not due to my negligence, it was just the perfect storm. My colleague that wrote with me, her mother died, she ended up in hospital. So I was exonerated on that one. And then to answer your question, the longest ever was 3 months. Now in the civil court, I make a point of it not to, I remand the matter for judgment. I don't just leave it hanging sine die. I remand for 2 weeks, and if I do not give my judgment in 2 weeks, I have to be accountable to counsel and to the attorneys. And I will have to explain to them why is this judgment not ready. The longest in the district court was 7 weeks.
Yes. In the district court, in the High Court?
In the High Court was, I did the matter in November, and I gave my judgment in February, so I don't know if recess counts. My judgment was...
It does count.
Oh, no. So my judgment was ready in December, but I only got to place it on the roll in February, and I was back at the Magistrates Court already, so that's 3 months.
Yes. JP?
Thanks, Chief Justice. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening, JP.
Perhaps just as a follow-up to your response to the question posed by the CJ about your outstanding judgment, that was outstanding for 6 months. Just to clarify that the aspect was discussed with you, and I discovered that the delay was partially because of a misunderstanding between you and the senior judge that was sitting with you, because you were under the impression that the judgment had been delivered.
Yes, I've got a report from Judge Goliath that did the inquiry into it, but the bottom line remains I was the scribe, so I had to take responsibility for that, and I didn't follow up afterwards.
Yes.
That's how I feel about it.
Yeah, but that was taken into account?
Yes, yes,
Yes.
I was completely exonerated. She started the report with the fact that, it is not due to my
Yes,
fault.
and the reporting of the judgment to the Chief Justice is because of the reason that JPs are duty-bound to do so, isn't it?
I respect that, and if it wasn't for your call to me, we wouldn't have realized that that judgment was still outstanding, and thank you for that, JP.
Yes.
I understand that.
Yes. Mrs. Opperman, you were here at the JSC last year in the last round of interviews in October, isn't it?
That's correct.
Yes. Is there any additional experience that you have received since then?
I've since then now sat on this in the civil court uninterruptedly now. So I've really, my civil court experience has now gone through the roof. It's very good.
Thank you, Judge President. MEC?
Good evening, Ms.
Good
Opperman.
evening, Commissioner.
You indicated the work that you did with the community services work, that you were part of the executive board of COFSI.
Yes, the COFSI alumni. Yes, yes.
Just tell me what you were doing, and I am interested in the period, which is 2004 and 2012. What
Yes.
was your responsibility there?
At the COFSI alumni, that was more advocacy among students. A very important thing we did was to involve students and to let them interact with judges, and mostly our focus were on the students at the COFSI alumni, yeah.
In between the period 2004 and 2012, what would you elevate as one of the areas that you focus on as that board in the University of the Free State?
The COFSI alumni, as I say, we are mostly focused on the students and to ease the students into the profession. And my membership of the board there caused me to sit recently on the curriculum vitae development of the law faculty of the University of the Free State. So we also interacted, we were sort of a conduit between the university and the profession.
If I put it to you that in 2012, there was a huge outcry about the cases that involved between the workers and the
Yes.
student there.
Yes.
What is your comment on that?
Yes, that is indeed true, and we had an emergency meeting as the COFSI alumni as how to handle the matter. We met with the law faculty, the then Dean, Professor Henning, and we could not get involved because the university was actually a party. So the best we could do was to decide how to manage the situation the best.
Do you think the university worked that? That's your view. You will not be held responsible for that one. Do you think the university had handled that matter properly?
Well, they did their
Your
best.
own view.
My view is that they did the best. Well, they let justice take its due course. They did assist the workers that were involved. They did follow up with awareness raising as to the racial issues. I think they did the best they could in this situation, but it could have been better. It could have been better.
Just two more questions, JC. Your involvement in the Free State anti-human trafficking.
Yes.
What work are you doing, and which organizations are you working with? Were you working with?
That was, we started with the International Association with Women Judges when we raised awareness and we did training. And I was also part of the guidelines that were written for judicial officers. So it involved training, extensive training of judicial officers, awareness amongst judicial officers. And then when we started the forum, it was in collaboration with the university, social development, health was there. It was a very extensive partnership inside the community, NGOs, child welfare, and that also entailed training and awareness raising.
Your last comment on this one. Are we doing best in dealing with the human trafficking, or we still have to do more?
We have to do more because we underestimate the monster. I have a problem with the fact that we don't have enough data capturing on the issue. It is difficult to capture data, but it can go under the guise of so many crimes. It can go under rape, it can go under murder, it can go under abduction, it can go under illegal child labor. And we must start to identify the monster, keep the data, and raise awareness on that.
My last question, JC. Okay. You indicated that one of your judgment was taken on appeal.
Yes.
Why?
What happened there, it was a RAF matter, and I judged on the definition of the lump sum to be paid out to the claimant. I said it can be paid out, the nature of this claim justifies it to be paid out in a lump sum, and they took me on appeal on that. Two judgment in the Gauteng High Court followed my judgment, and then the Eastern Cape didn't follow my judgment, and they took this case on appeal, as the judge in the Supreme Court of Appeal said, for academic purposes. And they found against me, they leaned more to the compliance to the Constitution. I respect the law of President, but I think it could have gone it's an academic question that had to be asked.
Thank you, CJ.
Thank you, MEC. Commissioner Nyambi.
Thank you, CJ. In your own words, how will you rate the transformation of judiciary in our country?
Transformation is so many aspects in one basket that it's difficult to give you a simple answer to that. What I would say, transformation, you have to count the bodies. Justice must be seen to be done. It's the perception of the public. So in regard to statistics, we're not doing so well. I saw statistics that were issued in January this year, and I think we are only at 36% female. I think our other transformation, it's doing well. What also worries me is that we must do more to get pluralism in the minds of the judiciary. It's the mentalities that we must improve. There must be a meeting of the diverse minds. But the positive thing that happened is that we are pulling judges from all the different professions. It's very positive and it's very healthy. With regard to the system itself, the transformation, the support systems, I'm a bit worried. Expeditious justice, the transformation there is a bit slow for me.
Last year, as Parliament, through a flagship program called Taking Parliament to the People, we went to Free State. We visited a number of prisons. So the issue of overcrowding was a problem. So what might be the initiative that need to be strengthened to bolster prison capacity as a true rehabilitation centers?
Commissioner, that is it's a passion of mine. You will see in my curriculum vitae that since 2010, I developed the release of trial awaiting prisoners in terms of Section 62F. I was a regular visitor to the prison. I at least once a month visited the overcrowding. So it is horrific. I know we can't excuse the situation as it is. My remedy for that is that, again, properly trained, experienced magistrates must be placed in the bail courts and the reception courts. Bail isn't something for an inexperienced acting magistrates, because you must hold a financial inquiry, and there are other alternatives, such as releasing the accused in terms of Section 62F, which means they are monitored, they are placed under house arrest. There are so many other alternatives. The first remedy is we must revisit the expertise in the bail courts. And then there are other alternatives, such as correctional supervision, to release the people trial awaiting.
Thank you, CJ.
Thank you, Commissioner Nyambi. Minister?
Just a follow-up on the issue of overcrowding, without going into preamble as to the context of the overcrowding itself. But are you convinced that the justice system, not just the judges or presiding officers themselves, but everybody involved in the court system, are exploiting all alternative remedies or tools to not only expedite finalization of matters, but actually use such tools as diversion from the formal criminal justice system, such as non-custodial sentencing, as a way of limiting custodial sentencing to the most deserving of cases?
My answer is no. When diversion is being used, but I don't think to the extent it can be used, non-custodial sentences, restorative justice sentences. I worked in the Batu Township as a presiding officer for 2.5 years. And we initiated there a restorative justice non-custodial sentence program in collaboration with NICRO. It was me and one social worker. And it was a huge success, not because I did it, but the reaction of the community to that. I used to find people getting up at the back of the court and asking, magistrate, where must I take my child? He's naughty. Must I take him to the social worker or the doctor, or must I bring him to court? They are craving restorative justice and non-custodial sentences. With these sentences, we also worked with the family and the community itself. So before I imposed the sentence, I would even draw from the community leaders to hear what is the traditional law, how do they deal in tradition and culture with crimes like this in the community. And I used to get the reports from the social worker, or they would come and testify. So my answer is, there is so much to be done, but we need to go there. We are not doing enough at the moment.
Sorry, actually, you've just preempted me on my next question,
Yes.
and that is whether you call it informal judicial systems, such as traditional courts and other non-conventional
Yes.
dispute resolution mechanisms. Do you believe that in South Africa we are using enough of them, we're giving enough space for them to operate, we're encouraging greater utilization of those alternative forms of dispute resolution, precisely in order to reduce the volume of matters that come before courts?
Minister, there are two things that I think judicial officers and magistrates must be trained on intensively, and that is political science. They must know where their place is in the governance of a democracy. And the other thing is to learn to know your society better. When I was in Batu, that was my first meeting with customary law, and customary law has a strong restorative justice and mediation, dispute resolution influence. It's based on that. It's not based on revenge or anything like that. So to answer your question, I don't think customary law has accessed our formal law enough. We must open the doors. But my worry is, and why I think they can't get in, is the lack of codification. Because when I started to apply the little customary law that I could, I was aware of the fact that I'm a creature of statute. So I must be very, very careful where I go when I impose a sentence if I want to take cognizance of the customary law. And I think what makes us fearful to apply it is ignorance in codification.
Thank you, Chief Justice.
Thank you, Minister. Commissioner Fourie.
Thank you, Chief Justice. Good afternoon or evening,
Good evening,
Ms.
Commissioner.
Opperman. When we interviewed you at the last sitting in October, if I'm not mistaken, you then applied for a position on the Western Cape
That's
bench.
correct.
Is that correct? So this is your first appearance or interview for the Free State Division.
For my home. Yeah.
I just want to make sure about your acting time. You only acted in the Free State, is that right?
I only acted in the Free State, yes.
And according to your questionnaire, it was October 2015 to December 2015, and again February 2016 to
And
March 2016.
Yes, and there was a small period in May
Where you
2016.
went back for apartheid.
That's
matter.
right, that's right.
So, since your interview in October, you haven't acted in the High Court
No,
again.
not again, but
And the reference to that you spent all your time in the civil court in reaction to a question from the JP was that you referred to the district court, the
yes,
magistrates'
the district civil court, and of course I had got a lot of exposure in the High Court to civil matters. Yes, yes.
So you haven't acted in the High Court since March 2016, so that's
May
more than
2016. Yes, yes,
almost 2 years.
Yes.
Any particular reason for that?
I don't know. I don't know why I wasn't invited back. But I think also I was so committed at that stage to the Tshepong Domestic Violence Centre. We worked almost 18 hours a day with the training and everything. But I don't know why I wasn't invited. I wasn't informed of any mistakes that I made.
Thank you, Ms. Opperman.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Chief Justice.
Thank you, Commissioner Fourie. Commissioner Norman.
Thank you, Chief Justice. Good evening, Ms. Opperman.
Good evening, Commissioner.
Thank you. In the matter of State versus Van Wyk, which when you answered the question, one of the questions from the Minister dealing with restorative justice, there is an indication that there was a paper that you were going to publish in December of 2017. I just want to
Yes.
check whether you actually did that.
Oh, that paper is not done yet. It's lying on my desk. It feels as if I lost 6 months of my life somewhere. I'm so behind, but I'm still working on it. It's actually at the citation checking phase now. My footnotes must be checked and everything, yeah.
All right. Thank you, Chief Justice.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Norman. Commissioner Nogesi.
Chief Justice, just one question. You, in the district court, do you have partly heard matters that you have?
At the moment, in the civil court, I've got
And
two.
the criminal?
In the criminal court, none in the criminal court. I have also recently been asked to help with children's court matters. I've got 2 children's court matters and then 3 civil court matters partly heard, but they are due in, I remanded them to the second 2 last weeks in May. So for 2 weeks, I'm just going to concentrate on my partly heard matters.
You, for me to understand, you are aware of the norms and standards?
Of the norms and
Officers, the norms and standards.
absolutely.
You have read that.
Yes, yes. Now I've went on judicial management courses where we discussed and worked with the norms and standards extensively. No, we live by that, specifically in the district courts.
Thank you, Ms. Opperman. You're excused.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you.